Security, or the lack thereof, remains the biggest conversation that Nigerians are having, even as they prepare to vote in Saturday's presidential election. Now, despite repeated assurances from government through the Inspector General of Police and military chiefs, the level of concern being shown by all seems to be more deep-seated than originally envisaged. Bukola Idowu is an election security expert, and he joins us now to discuss the conduct of the presidential and national legislative polls, security threats to expect, and how to tackle them. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Now, Bukola, the police have been talking tough. We've seen videos of army tanks out on the streets, yet a politician was killed in Enugu State. We've heard of explosions in Rivers State, and the environment is just quite tense at the moment. How would you address the security situation that have been put in place for tomorrow's election?
Well, I think in response to the tense environment and the tense atmosphere we have around these elections, the security agencies decided to roll out their strategy, and we begin to see that in terms of the show of force that we have seen in some of the states. And as at our last monitoring exercise, we have seen show of force in almost like about 30 states out of 36 states. And which we feel that many of them are also going to happen this evening too, in some of those states that are outstanding. But one of the things we have to also notice is that why that is good, that also has its own adverse effect, because it can actually give voters a kind of sense of as if you are going into war. And that can also scare some voters away. But of course, if you look at the indices, if you look at what has been happening in terms of the killings, in terms of the insightful messages we've been having, and in sight of electoral violence. For instance, just this month alone, and today is 24th of February, we've recorded close to close to 30 cases of violence in February alone, and that is worrying. That is not something that should be encouraged. And I think the response of the security agencies, is just they are just responding to some of these challenges we have around electoral violence.
And I just wanted to pick up on what you said. It is quite warlike atmosphere. Even though it's supposed to be an election, people are going into it with palatable fear. We saw the army tanks. We've been given warnings to stay back if we aren't participating in the electoral process. But my question is the heavy-handedness sometimes of these security experts. Granted, it is a very sensitive time and warnings have been given out. We know that individuals might step outside of that. And the case in point is many people and their PVCs. Now, we know a lot of people have had issues with collecting their PVCs. They would have registered for whatever reason. They weren't able to collect it, or they went missing. Those people are already aggrieved. We're hoping that they don't turn up to the polling booths tomorrow. But in the situation where they do turn up to the polling booths tomorrow and they are aggrieved, we're hoping that the situations won't get escalated. So is there any training that the security experts are getting in order to know how to handle things with the complete crack of the whip, or with a little bit of gentleness? Or is there no wiggle room there? Is this a situation where everything is going to be, everyone is going to be come down quite hard upon if they are caught in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Well, I think number one thing we have to establish is that the security agencies are going to arrest, detain, or deal with people who are likely going to foment trouble, who are likely going to go against the law. And I feel that the most important thing here is why we encourage them to secure the election. But the most important thing is that they also have to conduct that and comport themselves within the ambit of the law, because it is possible that they begin to operate within or outside the human rights laws, and that become another challenge. While you are trying to solve a problem of election security, you are also creating another one which comes to human rights abuse. Of course, there are standard operation practice for the security agencies, and that is number one, is that the security agencies that are going to be at the polling unit are not going to be harmed. And at the same time, the military are going to be on standby outside the perimeter. Probably they guide the borders of the states, of those local governments, and that is where they are going to be. But this election is primarily the responsibility of the police to secure. And they are just bringing other agency, security agency in for assistance and collaboration. But primarily, it is within the domain of the Nigerian police to secure this election. And they know what they need to do. The standard operating practice has been there for them, and they have been trained on the election security. I am part of that. We are part of that, even in developing a manual for the training and how to respond, what they need to do, and for them to also understand the process. Because if you don't understand the process, you might begin to make, you might begin to make arrests on things that are lawful. You need to know when to make arrests. You need to know when to call for reinforcement, because most of the policemen and the security agencies that, like I said, that are going to be on the polling unit are not going to be harmed. And that, and again, that also has its own challenge, because when they are, overwhelmed, what are they going to do before reinforcement comes in? Of course, there are people that are aggrieved, maybe because of their PVC. But what it means, again, is that they don't need to show up at the polling unit, because the law is you don't have PVC, you are not going to vote. So there is nothing you need to come and do. That is not the time, and that is not the place to protest. Of course, there are channels of which they can do that. But we don't expect anybody to come to the polling unit tomorrow to come and protest because you don't have a PVC. And that could be like you are just creating something that you can be arrested for. But this is the time you need. If you need to go to INEC office, you can do that, but not really on the election day.
Now, Bukola, I'd like to know, as an election security expert, what kind of threat do you anticipate the security agencies will be dealing with tomorrow? And are you worried, perhaps, that polling units might be soft targets for terrorists? And in what way can such threats be neutralized?
So the number one thing is that there are possibilities, and I won't rule out that fact that the polling unit can be a place of soft target for terrorists, and most especially in zones that have been dealing with terrorism and banditry. So it's possible, we are likely, it's possible. But at the same time, the response of the security agencies, their intelligence gathering, and how they will be able to nip that at the bud is key at this time around. Don't forget, the security agencies are also going to work on two major fronts. They need to secure the country against the external aggression, and which most times are caused by the terrorists. At the same time, they also need to secure the election. So they are going to work on two major fronts tomorrow. From today to tomorrow. So, but I don't see that being a challenge in the election. Don't forget, we have been on this journey since 2015, and we've conducted the election in 2015, even when we had we were at the peak of Boko Haram attack in the northeast. 2019, the same thing, we conducted an election. But the major concern is the electoral violence, not even terrorist attack or bandit attack for me, but the electoral violence. How do we respond? Because if this also happen within an election, it could also mean, and the terrorists, bandits can also take advantage of that to also expand that particular violence. However, if you ask me, and what we have identified and we have put out there, and I mean, we are also going to address the press today, this evening, and what we have put out there is that, look, one, the potential for violence in this election and that the security agencies need to really look at is, number one, though it looks archaic, but now it's more relevant than before, and that is ballot box snatching. And how is that going to happen? Because people don't really know. Don't forget that in Ekiti, in Osun, just concluded the election, we still had ballot box snatching. And how is that going to work? Because now, you know, if you are not, there is nothing you can do about beavers. So what the politicians are likely going to do is to make sure that results don't get counted to the extent that it gets into the beavers where they are not likely, I mean, where beavers is able to transmit it to the server and to the IREF where you are not going to do anything about it. So what they need to do is, what they are likely going to do is to disrupt the process by snatching the ballot paper, destroy it, and then so that particular polling unit is counted, and they are going to target the opponent's stronghold. So what are they trying to do is to make sure that vote did not count for them, did not count for the other, for the perpetrators too. And what have they been able to successfully will be able to do is to reduce the vote of the opponent. And this is where the security agencies need to be at alert. They need to they need to understand the suspicious movement of the people. Again, how they will be able to respond to overcrowded polling units. We still have a lot of polling units that are above 1,000. And what it means, and another thing that can mean jeopardy for this election tomorrow, and which I expect INEC to dot the I's and cross the T's, is the beavers. The beavers need to work. Beavers, anything that will make beavers to work to accredit in 2 minutes is a recipe for disaster. Beavers need to work less than 1 minute tomorrow. Less than, and I say it, less than 1 minute, because if you work 1 minute, that means 60 people is going to be accredited in 1 hour. So if it's work more than let's just say 2 minutes, that means 120 people. I mean, what it means is that you have 30 people. 30 people will be accredited in 1 hour. Now imagine where you have a polling unit of like about 750 people. So that tells you that we might likely vote into the night, and that is dependent on the slowness or the fastness of beavers. And so how will the security agency be able to manage this overcrowded? And at the same time, the agitation of, well, we've been here since morning is another thing. The third one I'm going to say is that we have seen correlation between vote buying and violence too, and we have seen that in few states. So how you are going to tell, and why is that going to be? Because a political party who feed the other party is outspending them in this particular election, they can also say, look, let's scatter everything here so that you don't actually have the vote because I don't have the money that you have. So it's also another scenario we need to play. I know some people will say, oh, there is naira scarcity. Now, whether there is naira scarcity or not, now there are other techniques these people are going to use to get vote to do vote buying, and I think the security agency need to be on top of their game tomorrow.
And thank you so much for joining us, Bukola Idowu. Such an important conversation that needs to be had the eve before elections. Thank you so much for joining us.